Everybody, how you doing today? This is Bryce from Victims to Victors, where we tell our story, how we overcame the trials, the tribulations, and the storms of our life, so you know that you are not alone and you too can become a victor. Today's guest is coming from far away, boy. He ain't native to North America, but is loving living here in California or there in California. And man, I'm kind of jealous actually. Quite freaking jealous. And man, he's an athlete, he's a student and continuously pressing forward to living the best life that he possibly can. Today, Munya, how are you doing today?
Great, man. I'm glad to be on your show. I'm really excited to do this.
Thank you, thank you. So I found you guys from scrolling, just scrolling, and I seen the organization. I was like, golly, what's this about? So I checked it out, and I was like, I am not athletic in any stretch of the imagination. I don't like. I'm 260. You want me to run? I ain't running. You want me to swim? I'm a rock. You want me to play basketball? I don't know what I'm doing.
There's something you can do out there.
Yeah, almost. I talk. That's all I do.
That's good enough for me.
Most definitely. So, what part of Cali are you from, brother?
Well, I was actually born and raised in Zimbabwe, but I currently live in the Bay Area.
Yeah, man. So Zimbabwe, is that the east? No, that's west, right?
No, it's a southern African country.
Okay. And so what's the climate right now? Obviously, we'll talk about back when you were there, but right now, what is the climate of like the government? Is it like stable, sturdy? Is it like, good to go travel to, or you wouldn't say?
For a lot of people, I'd say it's a little bit stable. There are things happening right now that I'm not quite sure because I haven't been home in a little bit. But with reports, they're constantly trying to stabilize things, but in their own way that makes it a little bit more challenging for individuals that understand individual freedom and how that works. So it's a safe place. But because of COVID, there's a lot of restrictions around travel. But there's a lot of things that are changing. I'm hoping for the best, but it's all up in the air right now. Just waiting to see some journalists get arrested here and there. Some opposition political party members get arrested for frivolous accusations. So it changes on a daily basis.
Wow. And so you're in California now. So how are you guys dealing with the COVID? How are you guys like locked down, or is it more like freely loose? Like how is it going?
Well, there are still restrictions around, how you can move. You can still go places, but you just have to maintain social distancing, wear your mask. You can go pick up food. There isn't a lot of places that you can sit down and eat at.
Okay.
But I've been working with part of the team that does case investigation and contact tracing. So like reaching out to people that have contracted COVID. So we're seeing like a slow decline of the numbers, but every day we're constantly getting new feedback of what's happening. We're bracing for a new uptick in numbers, but we'll that it doesn't get worse.
Ain't that the truth? So, brother, man, let's go back. Let's go because ain't nobody want to get locked down even more, man. I'm in Canada, and they you guys in the States, right? Y'all got freedom. y'all know what freedom is. Here we don't. We don't.
Yeah.
If you say something that somebody doesn't like it's not social media. Like you will be banned. Like you'll get in trouble. You'll get tickets. You'll be fined. You can't say things. You can't do anything. Gotta love the country.
Yeah. Some freer than others, but yeah, I get it.
For sure. So let's take it back, man. Let's take it back. So how was it when you were like mom and dad? How was that in the household? Was it like a open conversation, like you could talk about everything, or is it more like strict, like do your job, do this, and like how was the upbringing at home?
So, when I was 5, my mom passed away because of spinal meningitis. I'm not quite sure because I was very, very young.
For sure.
And my dad remarried right after that. So, uh, for my formative years, I didn't see my dad as much as I could. So I lived with my sisters. So
Okay.
I had some type of independence living with my sisters. I had an opportunity to explore what I wanted to do,
Mm.
and then eventually I was able to visit my dad. It was a little bit strict,
Mm.
but I also identified with some of his politics. He's the one that actually inspired me to think about, not just within myself, but like to think outside the box of
Mm.
situation. Sometimes we'll tell stories about he was born before independence. So some of the stories that he used to tell were centered around his own personal struggle against, um, you know, uh, prejudice in the workplace, working as a majority, working for the empowered minority back in the day. So, just listening to him talk about like some of the work that he did, how he introduced, non-segregated like tea time at work. It's something that motivated me to think about, okay, uh, I'm a young person. I've seen and I've heard about what my dad has done,
Mm-hmm.
but now I have independence. What more can I do? So,
Facts.
yeah.
Facts. That's so important, man. Like I'm watching a couple people, and um, they're a little bit more controversial, so I won't really name their names. But they're talking about identity for males and identity for females, and how our upbringing and our like the formative years are very, very important. You know what I mean? And understanding and learning who you are and where you get your identity from, right? Like your parents or the guardians, who's ever in your life. And you know, it's amazing that your dad was able to express like real situations, not just like, "Hey, how's it going today?" You know, like.
Yeah, I mean, as an African man, he had his own challenges that he had to navigate. But with regards to like everyday issues for fighting for you know the the common person, the encumbered individual, he had his struggles.
Mm.
So yeah, that uh, stuck with me. And just like listening to his story and just realizing that as individuals we have an opportunity when we get educated. He was fortunate enough that he got his secondary school education, and he was able to leave his rural area and go work in the city. And by so doing, it was, you know, smart and brilliant for his time.
Mm.
So, like, just taking those lessons from where you started off to where you ended, and then me just thinking about carrying the torch from, being from Zimbabwe and then getting an opportunity to go elsewhere to get an education, and hopefully bring back the lessons that I have learned.
Mm.
Something that shapes who I am. There are that I wish that we talked more about, but that is also like work that I have to do, like internally, to figure out who exactly am I.
Mm.
The relationship that I had with him, I, I am different in ways that he may not be, would not have been accepting of. But I also accept that, he grew up in a very different time. That's not excusing him, but it's just that, even I myself have my, my shortcomings. And
Yeah, for sure.
it's, yeah, constant education and relearning and de-learning some of the things that we like hold dear.
Makes sense. And man, like I like the fact that you're like, hey, you know what? Hey, I'm America, great country, but I'm gonna go back home and make that place better. I love that. I love that.
Hopefully, I mean, that's always a goal for everyone that comes out here, but it's you slowly realize that although you want an opportunity to go back, there are certain situations that don't necessarily allow you to go back, especially with regards to individual freedoms. There are certain things that I cannot speak about openly because, once, and somebody finds out and the whole community knows, and it makes it impossible for, the community to accept. And as much as I want to be that voice for change, I feel like there are places and situations and sort of like individual identities that are not ready for us to accept as Zimbabweans or certain African communities. Not to say that we will not accept them. It's just that right now, there are, I don't want to say bigger issues, but for the majority of the country, they would rather focus on issues concerning the economy. They would rather focus on issues that have to do with, feeding their families. Whereas, like,
kind of important.
yeah, coming back with like, hey, I'm an individual. I need my individual freedom. So look at
Like, what?
get
I want food. Okay, like I don't know what you.
out of here with your individual freedoms. Individual freedoms are not going to feed my family, but at the end of the day, it's just understanding that we have different perspectives.
That
Yeah.
And it's so like I talked to this military guy, and he was saying what we do to fight in certain parts of, like when they went to the overseas, right? We would drop iPhones or iPads, and they would give them access, right, to what we have and how we live our lives, that you could do whatever you want to do. And they started to see the shape of the people, the populace start to change, because their mind was like, oh, hold on, I don't need to live like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Access to information is key to empowerment. That's why you have, like, in certain parts of the world, education is not very accessible, because when you have an educated populace, depending on the type of education that you're bringing in, right? Like, when people can read, it expands their imagination, and when people have access to relevant information, that challenges the status quo. It Those are some of the ways that modern day governments or governments in general have been toppled, because people start imagining something different to the reality that they have been fed for so long. There are countless examples of institutions, governments, and peoples that have failed because somebody got an opportunity to have access to that vital information that they needed, and they learned something that human rights are not.
They're a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds like human rights. Like everybody has human rights. Not so much.
No, not. I mean, yeah, you could think about it in that way, like, but then some places will define what constitutes a human right, and that is what becomes problematic, because, like, when we have individuals deciding what certain human rights fall into, by limiting other human rights, it's very weird and very confusing that, like, in the same situations where, say, in some African communities, right, they speak of gender empowerment, but they're not up to the same speed as, say, the US or Canada, where when you're talking about gender empowerment or individual freedoms, you're also including issues concerning the LGBTQ community, because when those folks imagine human rights, it's in a narrow scope, I would say. So it's definitely interesting, like how as we go along, we start picking and choosing what human rights we want to focus on and what human rights we want to guarantee to our people. So yeah.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I feel sheltered with like all this information that we got on this thing. I feel like kind of sheltered. Like, I'm in Canada. I could, for the most part, do what I want, say what I, for the most part,
Yeah.
and live my life. But
Uh,
me living my life, I got 7 daughters. Seven. I got 7 daughters that
yes.
I have no fear of them going to college, university, going to whatever school they want to go to. No issues. I live in a fairly pretty good neighborhood. No issues. Go walk on the street, go play with your friends, have a good time. It's great.
Right.
Not everybody has that. Like that's not a thing. That's not a real like a thing. That's us. Like
I have no fear for your daughters to walk out, but them as individuals, they could be afraid to walk outside the house because there are still other men out there that look
oh no, yeah.
at
Oh,
targets.
no. I'm not one of those guys like, oh, it's perfectly fine. No.
Oh yeah, no, I understand. I'm just
No, you
like,
got to understand.
yeah, like we have freedoms, right? Like even here in the U.S., like I think of my freedoms and what I can do, but within those freedoms are still limited. Like I constantly think of my situation as, say, as a black man in America, right? There are certain things that I'm seeing on the news, certain things that affect me emotionally, and sort of like drain me. But before I came here, I didn't have to think about prejudice or targeting or profiling in that same way, because I came from a place where I felt like I was relatively free because I was around the country's 85% to 90% black. So I didn't have to like experience profiling. But then when you immediately situation where I felt like now I'm free, I'm in the US, then it's like, well, yes, but not really. So the level is like
This is
rising.
true. This is the truth. Like that's a good way to put it. Like we are free, but there is certain things that other people put on us, and that's really the main thing for me. Even why I started this podcast, right? Is
Right.
because so there's, in my opinion, there's two ways to be a victim, right? One, I put a gun to your head, I kick down your door, you are an actual victim of some heinous act, right? You're a victim for sure. But then
Right.
it's a situational victim. So like the COVID, I've never been affected by COVID. I don't know anybody that's affected with COVID. And
Right.
like, but in the situation, I can't go here, I can't do this, I can't do this.
Right.
Hurricane Katrina, I'm in Canada. I
Mm-hmm.
I never even I never even been to those streets. I've never even been there. I never even heard of these places, right? The Ninth Ward. Everybody knows about it, but we were impacted by it. And the fact of your
Right.
mind being a victim, like, oh man, the COVID, the recession, the whatever the situation is, I can't deal with this, this politician, that politician. It's the mindset of not being able to, or being, you know what I mean? And understanding that, hey, there's some, there's some shit that's going to happen in life. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, there is.
it's your mindset. How
Mm-hmm.
are you going to deal with it? What are you going to do to overcome that situation? And so, if we go back, so did you do high school here, or was that back home?
No, I did all my high school back home. I was only able to come out to the U.S. for college.
Just for college, okay. So like, so if we were, we were back home, me and you, grade 10, sitting right beside each other, what would that look like? What would it be? How would our relationship be?
Well, it would definitely be affected by various things. For instance, depending on your upbringing, right? Do you have a family that's in the diaspora? So if you have a family that's in the diaspora, it means that you have access that I may not have because you have, say, maybe an uncle or brother or an older sister that's sending you a couple of dollars a month to be able to buy lunch, to be able to buy the books that you need, or even afford a brand new uniform. So that would be sort of like the situation that you find yourself in. Um, going to school in a situation where you only have finite amount of hours to be at school, and you don't have access to, say, sporting opportunities. You don't have access to sporting equipment. You don't have access to STEM education because you don't have the general access to the resources that you need. So, side by slide in class, you would have to think about all those factors, like where am I coming from? What is my family set up like? Am I an orphan, or am I in a household where I have both my mom and dad?
Mm. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what was like your personality like? Grade 10. What were you like a ladies' man? Were you like still like you're an athlete now? So like, were you an athlete back home? Like, how was that?
So I did my grade 10 twice because I had cancer when I was 15. I was diagnosed finally with cancer when I was 15. So grade
You said
9 and
finally. What do you mean
yeah.
finally?
So I did my grade 9 and 10. So that's junior and senior year, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So there was a time when I got injured, and then I had to go through a whole series of hospital stay-ins without, access to medication and stuff like that. So I couldn't go back to school. I would go back to school maybe for about a month, and then my left leg would get worse, and then I would have to go to the hospital and spend maybe a month or two in the hospital, and then come out again.
You're saying you went to the hospital with no medicine?
Well, I was in the hospital at a time where there wasn't any food. Mind you, this was around 2007, 2008, and that was the time when the recession hit. Right, like I was in the hospital in the thick of things in 2008, and I was in Form 4 at the time, about to write my examinations, and sometime in halfway through January, uh, I couldn't handle it. You know, I visited my dad, and then by May, I had a big old tumor on my leg because of the injury that I had sustained a couple of months prior to that. But we didn't know. We just thought it was swelling. So I'd go to the hospital. They'll drain it. They'll make me stay in the hospital for a couple of months,
But
and then
they wouldn't like test it out, like, or was it just because there's no access to, like the
access to that, and the doctors needed money. So anyway, after that whole like cancer situation, getting the diagnosis finally, that was in 2009. I actually got the final diagnosis that I had cancer, and having to stay in the hospital for a couple of more months, and then redoing my grade 9 and 10 in 2011 and 12. That's when I realized that I've lost my leg already. I shouldn't take life too seriously. It's like right now I just need to live, try and joke a little bit if I can. If I was even aware of the idea of like flirting, I mean, I was not a very like confident kid, but I had my people that were around me, supportive,
for sure.
and those self-image issues crept in from time to time. The depression kicked in, and at home I was constantly angry because I felt like they failed me, but it was just me acting out over something that I knew that they didn't have control over, or I am much more aware now as control. But back then it was basically a hard pill to swallow. That I'm 15, I've just lost my leg, and the expectation is go back to school. Of which it wasn't, because I chose to go back to school myself.
Wow.
But I don't know what I was angry about. So I'll be angry at home and be depressed in I want to stay in my room, even though I shared the room with 3 other people. So I'll stay in the room for the time. But at school, I'll try to put on a brave face because when you're outside, keep your dirty laundry at home and don't air in the public. So at school, I tried to do the best that I could and study as hard as I could because I knew that as an amputee in Zimbabwe, the only opportunities that would come my way were opportunities where I was using my then I was using my brawn. So
Okay. True, true. So here, and I'm sure in the States, if if you are, if something happens to you, the doctors are like, all right, cool, let's run all these tests and, we'll figure it out, right? No problem. Not even thinking about it. Just like, hey, go do your thing and come back
yeah,
and figure it out. You're like, no, that's not the case. Like, we don't do that stuff. Like, give us the money. No money? Okay, well,
yeah.
like that's wild. So like here, my wife had a C-section, and they offered to send a nurse to check it out like couple weeks later, just to make sure everything was good. I'm sure that wasn't the option, when you were back home, right?
No,
So
no,
the
not even the option right now.
not even like for people back home, it's not even there.
No, like I mean, I follow the news, and you constantly hear about situations where power goes out in the maternity ward with women trying to give birth, and it's it's a country, but it's plagued by a lot of challenges. That's all I can say.
Understood, understood. So you, as a 15-year-old high school kid, you got to clean your bandages yourself. Like, they're not sending anybody to help you out, nothing like that.
By
Like,
myself, yes.
and there was no like, hey, this is how you do it, and this is the way it's gonna feel. Because like, I talked to a guy here that he got paralyzed from the waist down because he was involved in an accident, right? And but they took him and said, hey, this is the situation, this is what's going to happen, you're going to feel this is the situation, you know what I mean? They walked you through it, right? Was that
Yeah.
anything that they did, or is it just like, hey bud, here's some bandages?
Hey, here's some lemons. Make lemonade out of it. But no, once it was that it. Like this is how you bandage your wound, and this is it.
Jeez.
When I got to it, I didn't have a prosthetic for the first 7 years that I was an amputee because the equipment wasn't there.
Yeah.
My family have
Jeez.
so it was definitely a challenging time,
Mm.
but I mean it was okay because I was one of the lucky few that had a family that supported me fully, even though sometimes I felt like I wasn't really appreciative of it. But like when I look back at it, I realized mostly because of bad mental health uh, and bad coping mechanisms of trying to blame somebody else. It was easy to blame my family than to actually focus on what the situation was and just accepting that I'm an amputee now. Well, I accepted it, but in the back of my mind, I needed to blame someone.
Mm.
The idea of having
Wow.
good health is something that only occurred to me when I got to college. Once I got to California, then they started talking about mental health left, right, and center, and it was a little bit overwhelming because when I had to go through my amputation and then have to go through chemotherapy, I had 2 sessions with psychotherapy, right? And basically, it wasn't, I felt like that choice of either amputating was taken away from me because I was talking to someone that was telling me what to do rather than, helping me figure out like what I needed. So like right now, the health systems in back home is a little bit challenging. If you don't have the resources, then yeah, you're definitely in for hard times.
Wow. It's such a it's a weird thing. You're like, hey, I didn't even think about mental health. Like, you know what I mean? Until obviously you came, you know, to California where that's a thing, like, right? Like that's what we deal
I
with.
was like, what's mental health? Like, I'm I'm not crazy, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so because that was the association that I had with, mental health, that, it's because you have some type of intellectual challenge. That's why you need to see someone that works with regards to mental health. But,
Sure.
it's through access to information, man. Like going back to that thing of access to information, the more you know, the more you grow.
100%, 100%. So the process of still bandage your wounds, studying, going to school, and like focusing on getting the best education you possibly could in order to get, you know, other opportunities if they would have come. I would have, you know, I would have guessed that wasn't the easiest thing to do. Like, hey, I got to study and then still like, take care of myself. You know, how was that? Like, yeah, how was that?
I want to say easiest thing, but like looking back at it, definitely wasn't, because I had, an opportunity to get out of my head a little bit when I went to school for those hours that I was away from home.
Yeah.
And like that competitive edge of wanting to prove something, being that one kid with a disability in my neighborhood. My best friend's brother did a good job of helping me, seeing things differently, because he was the only other kid in my neighborhood that had a disability, but he passed away right before I acquired mine. So
Wow.
for me, like it was a process of me replacing him as, the token disabled kid in the neighborhood. So he made it a point of talking to me about the value of
Mhm.
education, and the way that I interact with his siblings. And the person that he was, Shepard was an awesome guy. He was one of those kids that you could relate with, even though you didn't really understand disability at the time.
Yeah.
Disability, everything that he was trying to do, uh, you know, teaching himself uh, to go take his A-level math exams, doing everything from home, because general accessibility to, physical structures like buildings wasn't there for someone in a wheelchair. So it was easy because I was using crutches
Mhm.
and access, buildings much easier than he could have. It felt like it was smooth from that transition to go back to school. And I'm really grateful for my headmaster at the school that I was at in Zengeza I1, Mr. Renesu. Once I acquired my disability, I just disappeared from school one day, because it became so hard for me to go back and forth between school. And when they diagnosed me with cancer, um, with osteosarcoma, bone cancer, a week later I was in the hospital for amputation, and then I spent about 6 weeks recovering from that. And then after that, going back for chemotherapy, made some sessions. So I took like a whole year off. And then eventually I went back and then talked to my headmaster. I was like, I want to come back to school. And they basically asked me like, what grade do you want to come back as? Because I remember you had a year on and off. There were things that you may have missed. And I decided, instead of doing my year 10, I felt like I needed to refresh my memory with regards to year 9, and take it from there.
Hold
And
on, hold on. You're 15 and you be like, oh, no, no, no. I'll go back to grade 9. Bruh,
yeah,
if I was given that opportunity, I'd be like, shit, can I go to grade 10? Can I go to grade 12 or something? Get out of here.
yeah, but I also understood, like, I wanted to do good. I wanted to do good for myself, and to give myself an opportunity. I don't know, like, like sometimes I look back at like younger me and I'm like, that dude was so smart and so wise. Like, why can't I be as wise as that dude? But then I just realized, like, I'm still the same person. I've gotten myself here. It was just like one of those things that I was aware of, like, what I needed at the time, and some of the people that were around me that were providing counseling, and some of the brief conversations that I've had with some people in my life have been eye-opening. So, you know, he accepted that I wanted to do that, and even asked me, like, what class do you want to get in, because there's like a hierarchical system back home, and I chose to stay with my arts sort of like class. So those are the the classes that do humanities. I didn't want to focus on STEM or in accounting and mathematics. So he accepted everything that I asked of him, and he was like, I wish you all the best, in your life. Try as best as you can, and if you need any help, we'll try to provide as much help as we can. And from then on, it was just, not even, it didn't feel like an uphill climb. Although there were some parts of the school that I felt like they were a little bit discriminatory, but those were like my own personal feelings. I don't hold anything against that school. It's one of those schools that I look back at, and like, if I were to become, like, however successful in my life, maybe like sponsor a building at the school, provide resources for students over there, because I understand the challenges that students from that school go through.
Wow. Makes sense. Wow. I was talking to somebody and they were telling me that the Western world is in for a rude awakening when the other parts of the world get information, because they have this mindset that I've got to do it. I will not. Oh, like this. I have to. And then like you were saying that when you were just like, hey, I just got to do the best that I can. Like I'm not going to accept less of myself. And it's just like, hey,
Yeah.
the Western world. Like I'm sure you've noticed it while you're here. It's just like, we like to take it easy a little bit. Like, hey, take it easy.
I'm saying it, like, people just accept things as they are, but it has to do with just understanding, like, the situation as it is back home, right? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people are just like, all I can do is work hard and try and get myself the best situation I can get myself into. Families put a lot of pride in their children's education. A lot of wealth in Zimbabwe is centered around how many um, cows you have. So sometimes, parents will sell their cows um, just to send their kid to school.
Oh,
So yeah, education has value in a lot of African communities.
so if you have a lot of cows, your kid's probably gonna, do pretty good in life.
Not necessarily. So, there's like value in certain areas. Like, if you live in like certain areas, have that resource, yeah, you could sell it and make some money off of it and send your kids to school. What, they're going to be to the best school? Maybe not, but they'll get an opportunity to get it right. But there are other ways that, um, for the less fortunate, if you're less fortunate or not rich in the basic ideals that we have of having a lot of money in your bank account, as long as you have certain animals on your compound, you do it for yourself and your family, and you can afford to send your kids to school. So, yeah.
It comes down to barter and trading. That's crazy. That's wild.
Yeah, man, you gotta be hungry for it,
Most
like growing up in a situation that you're like, yeah, I gotta get out of here. You quickly develop that hunger to be like, yeah, fam, like I'm out of here. As I'm getting out, I gotta pull everybody else out of it.
So is that the mentality of most people, that I'm gonna get out, but once I get out, I'm going back? Because for me, I hate saying this, but like in the West, I find our community is the black community is a lot of crabs in a bucket. And we've said, this is this thing that's been going around. It's like, hey, oh, you're getting out, and then you try to pull the other one down and pull the other one down. do you find do you, one, do you see it like that over here, and two, is it the opposite back home? Like, hey, if somebody gets out, they're coming back for some help. Is that the way it goes?
Well, I could talk about it in like sociological perspective of how poverty affects different communities, right? So you have, say, in poorer communities, that's where you would find that competition of wanting to pull each other down, of not understanding that if one of us makes it, we all make it. In those areas that are classified as ghettos, where there's a lot of violence and a lot of poverty, you would find that, like, not propping each other up. But even within those areas, people that understand the value of family and the value of empowerment, you find certain nooks and crannies of, people that actually want to help. I hear stories of, say, certain basketball players or certain athletes that were in a community where, it was drug dealers. But once they found out that this kid has an opportunity to get out of this situation, those people were like, protect this kid by all means, because he's going to be a symbol
Mhm.
of our neighborhood, and he's going to do good for himself, and that's going to help us all. That happens. But you still find, people that are jealous of other people's success. Once they find you out that you've been successful, they come down and shoot you up, or something like that. It happens.
Thanks.
That I've learned so far as a Black person in America, I didn't think of it as something that existed, but I was introduced to the idea of what is commonly called the Black tax. I don't know if you're aware of that, where as
I've
a Black,
heard a bit, but I don't know what it is.
yeah. So as a Black person, if you are the first one to make it out in your family,
Mm-hmm.
there is this need for you to send money to your parents. There is this need for you to help out your siblings to get out of the situation they're in.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in some of my, say, um, not Black friends or not POC friends, right? Say like some of the people that I've met who identify as white, they would have their small family, where it's just mom, dad, maybe sister or brother.
Yep.
And that family, if they go and get a cushy job somewhere, whatever they earn is theirs. They can do whatever they want. They can go on as many holidays as they want. Whereas I, as a Black person or as an African person, I think about, okay, this month I've earned so much and this is my budget. And this surplus is not necessarily surplus. It's going towards
Wow.
my sister. My sister's kid needs a new uniform. So since I'm the only one that's in the US and that is able to sponsor that kid, I'm gonna take my sister's kids that are going to school right now, adopt them in terms of like having to take care of all their educational needs. That's my responsibility there. And then if they need anything else extra, like housing, if they need, food, if I have the means, I'm going to provide for that. That's something that I've been like grappling with finding out more about, how different but similar, um, Black communities in America and African communities are. That idea that, as a young person that has made it, that has a strong sense of, community belonging and that love for family. This is my responsibility, because, yeah, it takes a village, and once that village has made you who you are, it takes that individual to help out that village as well.
That is very powerful. That now, do you think it's a hindrance that, so let's say this, if you have surplus, and so you're going to help out your family back home, that you can help them out. Now, if you would save that money, invest it in yourself and some other whatever business venture, whatever it is, and then after you would be able to help them even more, is it better to help them now when the opportunity is right, fresh, it's right here. I got $1. Here's $1. I got you know what I mean? Or should we
Mhm.
go long term and say, hey, I'm gonna be selfish in a way, keep it all to myself until I get mass amount. Like, what is your take on that?
Well, I mean, you could look at it in that way. That I would help out in the long term. I would gain more, and then I'll be able to do more. But the idea of gaining more and doing more later, you always keep on postponing, saying I'll do more when I gain more, right? Like the funny thing is, a lot of like, I'm not the only one in this situation. A lot of the immigrants that came to these places have gotten opportunities to prop themselves up in that way, that they're constantly reinvesting in themselves but also investing in their families and their relatives and stuff like that, right? Like that idea that if you give what you have, right, it's going to keep you hungry for a long time, and that sustains that drive to want to do more, to achieve more. And by so doing,
Mm.
there was a time when I came here, I felt like I was becoming complacent because I had everything that I needed. I wasn't working when I was in college. I had I had not the most money. Like I'll get like maybe $250 stipend a month from my scholarship,
Mm.
and it sustained me. So my family knew that I was not working, so there wasn't any real pressure for me to send anything back home.
Mm.
But once I started working, and then just realizing, when I started working, that's my dad passed away a couple of months after I started working. Um, and that's when it dawned on me that I need to start doing a lot more, right? And that, sending my whole paycheck for his funeral one time and realizing that I'm not really doing anything to get myself in a situation where I can do the most is a lesson that I learned from. Yes, it was a sad situation that get to go for his funeral or anything like that. But I understood that the people that needed to do the work were there, and they just needed support. So from that, I could have paid like, well, I'm gonna save this for me for now so that I can go back and then I'll be there, and then that helps long term. But I feel like we have, as you, we have this selfish gene where we get into that space where it's like, uh, I don't want to use people as bad examples, but like the richest person right now, right? The idea is if I gain more money, I'll be able to do more things. But yeah, but there's still, you know, about 3 million homeless people in California right now, right? And the person is not doing anything about that. It's not the richest person's responsibility, but coming from a place where the philosophy of Ubuntu, which is togetherness, people and togetherness, is enshrined in our daily activities, where we say "Munu," which is being a person is because of the people around.
Mm.
You realize that you can't let people starve. You have to help out as much as you can, or as little as you can.
100%.
It's still going to help out. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, we can gain as much as we want, but my siblings are not always going to be there, you know, uh, and their well-being is not always going to be taken care of. I could wait 20, 30 years. Who knows what happens in 20, 30 years? I want my happiness is based around their, you know, sense of pride and joy in who I am and how. I mean, there's a little bit of selfishness in there as well. Say like I'm able to like help out with my family because it gives me that I'm doing this. It's something that gives me pleasure to be
For
able to do
sure.
that. So
Sure.
it's a give and take situation. I mean, I know people that have gone for years and have come back and developed massive structures, but those massive structures, you live them in them for a year, and then that's it. Personally, that's not a sustainable at it.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. Like my thing is, I have no issue how much you want to make in your world. Like hey, make as much as you want. You know what I mean?
Hey,
Capitalism all the way. I just don't want the government telling me I have to give. You know what I mean? Like, let me
yeah,
do it. Let me do it. Let
yeah,
me give. Don't tell me. Like, this is my money. I work for
do
this.
it.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
that I I firmly believe in that. I think that's a good way of looking at things. Like I'm, the what I'm able to do now is not for the whole country. It's just for not what I'm doing is not affecting 100 people, maybe 10 people that I like the closest that I can help right now, and that's okay. That's my mission in life. I realize that as individuals, we have individual goals, and we seek out opportunities that maximize our ability to attain those goals. And you know, happiness is derived from various places in our lives. Some people are happy just making money. Some people,
Thanks.
the reason why I chose to go for like the humanities side of education is because, as a young person, I realized that with a disability, there are issues with regards to policy and governance that fail people, and that's my passion, right? So
Mm.
for some of my friends, they were like, "Well, I want to go into accounting so that I could be a chartered accountant, and I want to make a lot of money." And we're still friends today with
Yeah.
with people like that. We disagree on like a lot of things, but I also appreciate them as individuals.
This is completely off topic, but I'm so happy you said that because we in Canada, we see this is what we see. Honestly, this is what we see. If you're on the right side of things, you can't have friends with the left side of the political side. And if you want to make money, you don't like people, and you can't be friends, and it's all this, and that's what we see. It's very polarizing, right?
Yeah, it's not always like that. It's just have a conversation, down for
Exactly. Oh my
a couple.
God. Like we don't see that though. Like what I'm saying, like obviously, because like it's media, right? Like they only show you the extremes of everything, and it
Yeah, we gotta be polarized.
yeah, they got to, they got to. But we've talked almost an hour, and one
Yeah,
thing that I've got from you is you have a physical disability, but that did nothing, absolutely nothing, if not better to feed the fire in the furnace, if you will, of taking a cause or taking something and saying, I'm gonna go get this. And like I think I've been, a person that says, "Oh my gosh, can I help you? Like, is there anything I could do? Like, no, I'll do that. I'll do that." And I'll see somebody and they're like, "What you talking about? I can do that shit. What do you think? Get out of here." And I'm like, "Oh my God, did I offend you? Oh my God," And especially being Canadian, like we're sorry about everything. But
gotta apologize.
yeah, we apologize for God, everything you can think about. And I really am learning is it's a limitation on your physical ability, but not your mindset or your lively potential, right? Your capability is not limited to your physical structure, and
No,
it's
what I actually did was opened new horizons for me, because you know growing up in an able-bodied community or society, right, as one of the many people who didn't have a disability, there was nothing about me that was yeah, I had my outstanding moments, but once I got you know um, a disability, that's when I had to seek out new ways of thinking and new ways of doing things. And I started meeting up with new friends, friends who have lived with a disability all their lives,
hmm,
learning about like, some of the ways that life is not fair. But I also believe that coming from that able-bodied perspective of viewing things, even though I've spent almost half my life has been being a person with a disability, as I am looking up at 30 in the next couple of years. Um, it's been, I reflect on it, that if I had been born with a disability, I would probably had a mindset of maybe a defeatist mindset. And if I had stayed a person without a disability, I would have been like one of those proud, whatever people that was in your face about little things and, not really caring about people. But, bringing those two worlds and how they collided at the time that they did, and then bringing the experiences from when I was younger with the lessons from my dad, and then meeting people in my life later that had to all their lives, and merging all these experiences together and these personalities and these life lessons created a product that is me now, a product that is able to think, not, I understand if someone is being defeatist, but I also want to give myself and other people opportunities and solutions and build that up in some way. So, like being a disability is something that I have. It's not who I am.
Ooh, ooh,
I
no,
am
that's
more.
hmm. That right there. That's power. That like I'm sorry for cutting you off again, boy. Damn, that's. I think a lot of people need to know that. You know what I mean? That it's not who you are. That's not who you are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I've also, have had opportunities to have an opportunity to talk to somebody like yourself and other people that I've come across in my life, just to be able to count those blessings and have conversations with people and just realize, like, yeah, there's more to life. I think it helps, and I'm aware that I'm in a unique position where I've gotten more opportunities than other people, and I'm privileged in that, and I'm glad it happened to me in that way, that I've gotten privileges, and you know uh, now it's just my turn to do the most that I can. It may not be much right now, but who knows, with time
For
we'll
sure.
see where we go. Yeah.
With your personality and mindset, boy, I'm sure, I'm sure that there's gonna be some things coming down the pipe for sure. I
Right.
only asked this to one guy that I did podcast with, but I want to ask you too because of what you just said. If you, knowing everything that you know now, being who you are now, would you have changed it? Would you like not allow that to happen?
I think about that, like, more than anything, like I you know I've had like things in my life that I'm like, if I had an opportunity I could have changed that. But when I really like dig deep into like my experiences, no, I wouldn't have. There are like a few times in life that I've not lived up to my fullest potential, or where I felt like I've let myself down by you know um I was an asshole to maybe to some people. And it's something that like hits me from time to time, like, oh no, when I was in like year 11 of high school, I did this to this one kid, and I said this, and that probably hurt their feelings. But when I look back at it, I don't think I would change anything, because it's like every day learning something new, and I'm constantly having to address that, and um, having to learn other ways of thinking, and I'm having to check myself, and that's okay. Like, we all have to learn at some point. We're not all perfect. And yeah, so with regards to the big life-changing thing of uh, being kicked and being chased and falling in a ditch and stuff like that, and eventually a year later being diagnosed with cancer. No, it was painful, but that pain sustains me in some ways, that it drives me with that, hunger. Some of the opportunities that I've gotten to be a wheelchair basketball player, to meet some incredible people, to be mentored by some amazing people, is because they were attracted to something that I was give at that point in time, that is being this kid with a disability. not willing to be let down or, give up. There were times I wanted to give up, but it's those times that I remember that if I had given up, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So it's not going to do me any good to give up now, because who knows what else is in store right now. So all the life changing experiences that I've had, the negatives, the positives, I wouldn't have changed anything. I mean,
Amazing.
I would have loved to come to the US and learn sooner, but I'm here now. And
Thanks.
yeah.
That's good. That's good, man. And just before we wrap up here, two things. What would be two things that you would tell somebody that is in this situation? Or just, they were able-bodied at the beginning, and then there, certain situations happened and they are not anymore. What would you allow them to know from your experience?
Well, two things about that. I would just say, give it time. Time is everything. Like, it's so cliched that, it says like time heals all wounds. It's crazy to think about it in that way, but just giving yourself time, no rush. Give yourself time to figure things out. Maybe you don't have access to wealth that will help you navigate life differently, but just give yourself time and space to breathe. It works out. Get out of your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort, because if I had decided to stay in my bedroom that I shared with 3 other people, I probably wouldn't be here, because that would have been my comfort. I took myself out of comfort by going back to school, where I was the only kid was an amputee, was on crutches, was wearing, pants with the way that I tucked them in on my left side, how that looked weird. I was self-conscious about all of that. And I was uncomfortable most of the time when people were talking about me right in front of my face. But I persevered through it, because I wanted to get out of what I was used to. So time and discomfort.
Time and discomfort.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And is there any question that I did not ask that you were like, man, boy, just ask me this question? Is there anything that
I hit everything. You hit everything.
Beauty. And man, last thing right here is state your name and then say, I am a victor.
My name is Munya, and I am a victor.
Man, brother, man, thank you so much for your time, your openness and willingness to share your testimony, how you overcame, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, man. Yeah, hit me up whenever. We're looking forward to. Yeah.
Most definitely. Is there a way that you want people to contact you? We can link it in the description there.
I'm actually not on social media, but yeah, I'm one of those hermits that just loves. So I have a LinkedIn. It's MUNYA So my first name and last name, Munya Mahiya. So I mean, if you want to reach out to me that way, that'll be the only social media that I have.
Sounds good, brother. We'll definitely do that. Thank you so much again, huh?
Hey, thanks, man. You have a good one.
You too, man.